Aaron Rodgers saves the best for least as the New York Jets win their season finale against the Dolphins at home 32-20. And did the Jets just lose out on Mike Vrabel? I'm Glenn Norton with Jet Nation Radio, jetnation.com. Be sure to log on to jetnation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. So I'm sure you saw it. Jets won 32-20 against the Dolphins, a Dolphins team that had nothing to play for beyond the first quarter-ish. As Dan Leberfeld pointed out during the game, once the MetLife Stadium Jumbotron flashed up the score of that game with the Chiefs up or Chiefs down, I think it was 17-0 at that point. Obviously, the Dolphins know that Pat Mahomes isn't playing and Kelsey isn't playing and Chris Jones isn't playing. So once Denver was up 17-0 or 24-0, I forget what point they were at just in that moment, but the Jets just marched right down the field and just the Dolphins laid down, basically. The Jets ran up the scoreboard after that. Up to that point, they hadn't done a whole lot. So the Jets take advantage. Aaron Rodgers with his first 4-touchdown game of the season in what will likely be his last game as a New York Jet. Again, I wouldn't say definitely at this point. I think they would like for it. I think Woody Johnson would like for it to definitely be his last game. But if his new general manager feels that Aaron Rodgers has enough left in the tank and there are no better options, maybe he's back. I think trade for JJ McCarthy if you can, with what will be, well, the Jets have the 7th pick now. Tonight's outcome between the Vikings Lions could drop them as low as 8. So not terrible. The win wasn't, look, I get the rooting for losses for draft position and all that, but when you're going to drop one spot, maybe 2, which is what happened here, and you weren't going to get a quarterback anyway, I'm not that bothered by it. I mean, yeah, you want to pick as high as possible, but it's not like you're the Giants you were in the driver's seat and you had the number 1 pick and you had a quarterback about to fall in your lap and you won and fell out of range. Like, that's devastating. But 7 to 8, I mean, look, there are, 8, 9, 10 guys in this class that I would gladly take on this team, and one of them will be there at 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever. So I don't feel like the win does a whole lot of damage to this team. I saw some people getting upset about the draft position. I got a few weeks ago, I wasn't thrilled when they beat Jacksonville, but as I said to someone the other day, that was a win with several weeks to go. Like, every win hurts you, but when it's the last one, this is as low as you can go. That's sort of the end of it. I'm not gonna, and I hate the Dolphins. Glad they're out of the playoffs too. And it was nice to see the Jets get a win against a team like the Dolphins. So Aaron Rodgers, as I said, throws for 4 touchdowns on the day, easily, or I should say, his best performance. I would say, yeah, as a Jet, he had 1 interception on his first throw of the game that bounced off Devontae Adams' hands and got picked off. So it wasn't even a bad throw, really. Rodgers finishes the day 23 out of 36. Ground game was solid. Jets didn't run it a ton. But Brees went 12 for 57. Isaiah Davis 4 for 41. Although I think at least one of his, not 2, was 3rd and 20, whatever, and he gets a 13-yard run. Still looked good though. He did have one good run on a situation that wasn't with the defense backing off. Braylon Allen, he only had 4 yards. He only had 15 or 4 carries. He only had 15 yards. Through the air, Devontae 6 for 88 with a touchdown. Allen Lazard 3 for 71, almost dropped a deep ball that Rodgers put right in his hands. He double caught it. Garrett Wilson probably had about half the targets Devontae Adams did. He had 4 catches for 51. Tyler Conklin caught touchdown number 500 from Aaron Rodgers, and Breece Hall caught one later in the game. So your 4 touchdown catches were Adams, Lazard, Hall, and Conklin. Ashton Davis on defense, big day for him. Couple interceptions. Now, granted, you're facing a backup quarterback who's not. I mean, whether he has anything to play for or not, he's not throwing interceptions on purpose. But still, you're not. It's not against a starting quarterback. Quincy Williams, 7 tackles. Who else? There were some sacks for Bruce Hector, Javon Kinlaw, Hassan Reddick. Almost at a full. Finishes the season with 1 sack. He got a half today, and he had a half a few weeks ago. Will McDonald had a sack and forced fumble. Or I guess they're calling his a half. I thought that was a full sack as I watched the game. But either way, season's over, folks. Season's over. The head coach and general manager search will resume. And I don't know. I don't know how many people saw this. I tweeted this out, and this was before Gerard Mayo got fired. Not like this morning, but because if you hadn't heard, Gerard Mayo was let go in New England immediately after the game. Couple hours before he was fired, as I'm sitting there thinking about it, we've talked about it. Myself, Dylan Terman, Chris Schubert, we've discussed on the air, off the air, what's going to happen with the head coaching thing, how Vrabel fits in. And it kind of hit me earlier. I was like, hang on a minute. New England stinks. Vrabel's got a legacy there. He's got a history there. Mayo, and listen, Mayo got a raw deal. There's no getting around that, right? He had 1 year with one of the least talented rosters in the NFL. That's to fire a guy after 1 year with that, I think I can see where people would say that's garbage because it kind of is. However, if a coach becomes available that you prefer, like the guy you hope Gerard Mayo will become, but you don't know yet, like you're looking at Gerard Mayo like, well, he might be really good one day. He might be a guy that makes deep playoff runs. Obviously, the goal is a championship, but you can't guarantee that stuff. But maybe you're looking at Mayo and thinking, well, Vrabel already is what we want Mayo to be, but don't know if he ever will. So let's just go get Vrabel while we can. Because if you pass on Vrabel and then Mayo doesn't become Vrabel, you're firing him in a few years, and you could have had the guy you wanted. So from that perspective, I kind of get New England's approach, but I still feel for Mayo. Again, one season with a garbage roster. What did you expect? But anyway, so what I said earlier in the day was, or what I tweeted earlier in the day was, Vrabel wants to be a Patriot, and the Jets want Vrabel. So we know how this is going to end. Vrabel's going to go to the Patriots. He's going to have Drake May, and the Jets are going to have to face them for the next 20 years. And hour and a half, 2 hours later, whatever it was, Mayo gets fired. And it's like, well, there it is. There's the opening. There's the opening Vrabel needed. And then a couple tweets from some reporters, one saying Vrabel had, in fact, sat down to meet with the Jets for the specific purpose of putting pressure on Robert Kraft. Like, hey, if New England wants me, I got to do something to make them make a move for me. Because maybe if Vrabel's sitting back and not taking interviews, New England thinks they have more time to think about it. But by sitting down with the Jets, not just any team, but a division rival. So that was, and then one report said that was in fact that what happened. Like Vrabel, that was a setup. Vrabel used the Jets to force the Pats to act. Then there were some follow-up tweets with, Josina Anderson saying, oh, the timing of that interview is a little fishy. And, people kind of catching on. Oh, this is what was happening. I compared it to the Kirk Cousins thing. Like Kirk Cousins knew he didn't want to be a Jet, but he knew he wanted to be a Viking and he would have liked a bit more money. So why not meet with the Jets and let them make their offer and let that offer go public and then tell the Vikings what the Jets offered. So similar thing here, not so much in terms of money, but like, hey, New England, if you don't make a move to bring me in, you might have to face me twice a year. So every reason in the world to believe that's what Vrabel wants. He's going to have a franchise quarterback. He's going to have a more premium draft pick. He's got obviously familiar with the area, familiar with the organization, the fans. He's beloved up there. So, and I mean, what were the Jets to Mike Vrabel his whole career? Like a doormat joke punching bag. Not a lot of nostalgia or, I can't imagine Mike Vrabel doing well in an environment with Woody Johnson and, like, hey, Brick's going to have some input. He's not going to be making the calls, but he will be speaking up in meetings and, we're going to hear him out. Vrabel's an alpha competitor. And there was no way he was going to put up with that. Like I said, this isn't, walking anything back. Like I said, it kind of hit me before it became a thing, before the Mayo signing. I was just sitting there thinking, I was thinking about it yesterday too, and I was just saying to myself, Vrabel working for Woody and Brick. Like I can't see it. I can't. And then once, again, after the tweet, once the news came out that Vrabel or that Mayo was let go. It was like, okay, well that's the end of it. That's where he's going. So expect Mike Vrabel to head to New England. Now they'll have to comply with the Rooney Rule and do their interviews, but that doesn't mean they can't make a phone call to Vrabel and say, "Hey, you're our guy. Just let us tick the boxes before the league will allow us to hire you." Which this is something that people talk about, how this is kind of insulting to the Rooney Rule candidates. If a coach comes available, like if I can understand if it's a rookie coach, but if you have a proven candidate available and you could tell the league, this is a legacy guy, we drafted him, he played for us, we won rings together, he's proven himself as a coach, we want him, you should just be able to hire him rather than say, no, you have to bring in two guys and pretend to be interested in hiring them. And I've heard that it's to give them the experience of interviewing, but how genuine is the interview going to be if you know you're not making the hire? As I said, some people have said it's insulting. I tend to agree with that. It's not. It's kind of like these are professionals, and you're going to bring people in to kind of insult them and go, we're going to sit down and quote unquote interview you, but we know we're not hiring you, and you know we're not hiring you. So Kenny says bye bye Vrabel. Agreed, Kenny. He's out the door. Yeah, him and Drake May. That's life. That's just the way it goes, guys. It's just the way it goes. 1 year we'll have a meaningful home game in December, says Scott Scoop. I disagree. I don't see that happening. Like, no. If it ever does, it's so far off, it's not even worth thinking about. So do you think Rex or Mike White will be the next head coach? Or Rex or Mike? I think the next head coach is going to be Aaron Glenn. I don't think the Jets are smart enough to hire Todd Monken. And that's not a knock on Aaron Glenn. I think Aaron Glenn will be a good coach, but I wanted and look, I could be wrong. Obviously, I can be wrong. I'm guessing, but I would like it to be an offensive guy. I want, as I've said many times over, I want the person at the head of the table when decisions are being made to be a guy who's worked with quarterbacks and worked through problems that quarterbacks have. Versus what we'll like, because again, when you bring in a rookie head coach, you're probably hiring a rookie offensive coordinator. Probably. So we'll see. Look, maybe I'm wrong. I hope I am. I hope it's not a rookie head coach and a rookie GM. I've said before, I would like Dimitrov. Yeah, Mayo is head coach. I don't know about that, but you want to bring him in as DC? I don't think I would have a problem with that if you bring Gerard Mayo in. But again, we'll see what happens. That's going to be for the new coaching staff to decide, and for the new GM to decide what happens with Aaron Rodgers and the quarterback situation. Sitting at when you're picking 7, 8, you're not getting a quarterback. I would imagine teams in front of you want to trade up for a quarterback, so they're going to have the more valuable picks. But some of those teams could also be exploring the JJ McCarthy trade. And really, how many? There's probably Tennessee's picking one, and they need a quarterback, so they're not trading out. I can't see any franchise, any GM who wants to keep his job not having a quarterback and passing on a quarterback. Just quit. Just go. Tennessee has got to be taking a quarterback. And there was a report earlier or a tweet that said they, and sometimes this stuff is garbage, but there was one tweet that said they love Cam Ward. So that leaves you with Shedeur Sanders. And I think enough teams like him, somebody's going to trade up. So you're either trading up for Shedeur or trading to Minnesota for JJ McCarthy or bringing back Aaron Rodgers. Or do you bring in a Justin Fields? Justin Fields, who, again, I had a lot of questions about coming out of college, played better this year. But when the couple games I watched him, I saw a lot of errant passes, a lot of wasn't impressive. I didn't look at him and think, oh, wow, I was wrong about this guy. He's really good. I was wrong about him being worse than Zach Wilson. Up to this point, let's see Zach with a NFL coaching staff. But you saw what happened with Justin Fields. Went from the Bears to a legit coaching staff and showed significant improvement. So either way, those guys aren't Jets. Fields might be one day. Feel pretty comfortable saying Zach won't be. Audition says Mayo is soft. That was something that was brought up during the year. Um, Honestly, I only watched the games the Jets played against the Patriots. I didn't see enough of them to say. Scott says Cleveland take a QB at 2. Well, they reworked Deshaun's contract. I can't see them rework deal. He's gonna be making a ton of money. I'd be shocked if they bring in another quarterback to compete with him, and move him to the bench, making I didn't see the details on the new contract, but I mean, I doubt he went down to like 6 million a year. He's probably still making an absolute ton of money. To where, and I think it was reworked in a way that it almost guarantees he'll stay. So it's not like they'll draft one and move Deshaun. So I don't think they take one at 2. Um, but we'll see what happens there. Rob says McCarthy's situation will be interesting if let go from Dallas. Oh, Mike McCarthy. I thought you meant JJ McCarthy. I don't think McCarthy would want to go from one meddling owner in Jerry to another in Woody. At least with Jerry, though, Jerry played college football. Like, Jerry knows X's and O's. Most owners don't. Personally, I'm you on Aaron Glenn or Brian Flores. I think with Brian Flores, as I said the other day, I was okay with him because, again, he kind of fits that criteria for me of like coach who got fired and had time away to reevaluate, maybe learn and grow. But one thing I forgot, I've said the other day, I was reminded, I forgot about his offensive coordinator situation. He had like a new offensive coordinator every 7-8 games, like literally. He had 5 OCs in 2 or 3 years. So, and then the whole Tua thing with the way he treated him. I'm kind of out on Flores, but Aaron Glenn would be my next up. Vlad says who's the best alternative after Vrabel? Again, Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn is a former Jet who wants to be here. Just as I said, Mike Vrabel is a former Patriot who wants to be there. Guys love the idea. If they played well somewhere and that they're respected and known by the fans, guys like going back to where they played. And that's what Vrabel's going to do, and I imagine that's what Aaron Glenn will. And again, Rich Cimini said it a few times, and I've mentioned it. Cimini talked about how Aaron Glenn told him that the Jets are his dream job. So we'll see. I think that's I want Monken. Monken's my top choice, but we haven't heard his name as Jets are interested in. But it is early. They can't start interviewing guys who are currently employed. So whoever the Ravens have in round 1, root for that team. Hope the Jets bring Monken in and see how that goes. But I'm not going to be upset if it's Aaron Glenn. Don't get me wrong. I've said many times throughout this, once the talk started about who will the candidates be, I've said all along I want an offensive guy, but if it's got to be defense, give me Aaron Glenn. I think, again, Vrabel, you can make the case because he's done it. He's shown he can be a head coach, which Aaron Glenn has not. But you gotta start somewhere, and usually you start with the Jets because the Jets love hiring first-time guys. Again, with the exception of Adam Gase, which is just ridiculous. Glenn would be great. Just have to go through the growing pains. Exactly. That's the thing, Vlad. Excuse me. And that's what I've said. The Jets right now, to me, are officially, once again, the Jets are in football purgatory. They probably don't have a quarterback. Even if they do have a quarterback, they have a quarterback for 1 year. Obviously, don't have a GM, don't have a head coach, maybe don't have a quarterback. If you do, you have him for a year. Once you hire your head coach, they're probably going with an inexperienced rookie who's going to need some time to grow. Even if he starts to get it by year 2 or 3, that's around the time your core guys will have already left because they want new contracts or knocking on the door of new contracts. Olu Fashanu will be, year 3 going into year 4 kind of thing. So even the guys who are rookies now, by the time your head coach is good, the dynamics are changing. That's why this was the window, right? This was like, okay, you've got Aaron Rodgers for 2 or 3 years. You've got Sauce, Garrett, JJ, blah, all this stuff. Now you don't know if you'll have Garrett. Cimini has said, again, I know there are some people in denial over the Garrett Wilson rumors, but as Cimini has said several times, and even without Cimini, if you can't see it, like if you cannot see the misery, sadness, and pain on the face of Garrett Wilson after every one of these losses, and you're like, oh yeah, he'll just give him some money, he'll come back. He might. I'm not saying he won't and that it's a done deal. I'm saying I think it's naive to assume that like it's preposterous that he would go. Just pay him. It's not money that he's not sad at the end of every game because he doesn't think the Jets are going to pay him. He's miserable at the end of every game because he thinks the Jets are never going to win. And you can make that argument that if they ever are going to win, it's not going to be anytime soon. So if Garrett goes and, I see people say, trade Sauce, he had a bad year. Stop it. He had a down year. I think, whether we like it or not, these guys are humans. I think when Saleh was fired, a lot of these guys were like, I'm done. Mailing it in the rest of the way. Although Sauce did pick up. Sauce had like 6 or 7 week stretch where he really struggled. Picked it up a little bit after that. Tackling improved. Coverage improved. So I'm not worried. I think Sauce is going to bust his tail this offseason and be back to form next year. So I'm not worried about that. How does next year look record-wise? Do you think 4 or 5 wins again? Look, Scott, here's the thing is anything really is possible because, I'm going to err on the side of, like 5, 6 wins. But having just said that, I admit it's silly. I'm just being cynical because I'm so fed up with this team right now. But the calm, rational approach, which I often have a hard time with, especially immediately after a game. But normally it's after a loss. I should be a little happier after a win. But no, we don't know who the quarterback is. We don't know who the head coach is. If they get Dimitroff, they bring in an experienced GM who has built teams and built a Super Bowl contender. If you bring in a Todd Monken, who he hasn't been an NFL head coach, but he's had a great deal of success as a college head coach, and tremendous success as an NFL offensive coordinator. I think that sort of makes him the best candidate after Vrabel, or after the Vrabel news. I still would have preferred him to Vrabel. But look, if you hit on a coach and you trade for a JJ McCarthy, you've got an offensive line. We know they have a good offensive line. You've got some really good pieces on defense. If Jermaine Johnson comes back healthy, I think there's a chance that first round pick gets used on a Mason Graham type. And even if not, I think I'm at the point now with the Jets. I either want an edge guy. Having said a million times I want Mason Graham, I would be happy with either Abdul Carter or Tedero McMillan, the receiver from Arizona, in round 1, and then use that round 2 pick on somebody like Deion Walker, out of Kentucky, and beef up that interior D line and go from there. Like, there's just so much that has to happen. But just being a Jets fan, knowing their history, how they screw everything up, I think another season of somewhere between 4 and 7 wins next year is probably the most likely outcome. But again, so much time to go before I might be predicting 11 wins by training camp. Who knows? So much has to happen between now and then. But what won't be happening, at least I don't think, is Mike Vrabel coming in here. And I think the Aaron Rodgers thing, as I said, U Stadium reported it, and we've seen some other outlets, some other sources who have said the relationship between Aaron Rodgers and Woody Johnson is very strained. Rich Cimini made it sound as if he thinks it's a done deal. Cimini's got it being a done deal. U Stadium says it's a done deal. So a lot of folks seem to think, or let me, to be more accurate, I don't know. I forget Cimini's exact words, but he did say that the relationship between Aaron Rodgers and Woody Johnson is very strained right now. I believe he said that he does not foresee Rodgers coming back. Who do you think the Jets give up for JJ? Well, it's got to be pick 8 as a starting point, and go from there. Because the thing is, say it all the time, when you're trading for a quarterback, a franchise quarterback, all the rules change in terms of your draft value chart. If you want a quarterback, you gotta pay over. You gotta pay more. Nobody takes the minimum when they feel like they're handing you a franchise quarterback. So at least pick 8. Is it a 1 and a 2? Is it a 1 this year and a 1 next year? I don't know. But I don't think it's going to be just a 1. I've seen people say that. I don't think a pick swap and a 2 because Minnesota's going to be picking late, obviously. So maybe something like that. But you're at least giving up this year's first rounder. Again, as a starting point. Let's see where Tankathon is at right now. I haven't looked at it in about an hour, and I'm not sure what other games have gone final. Again, the Jets shouldn't really be able to move other than the outcome of that game tonight. So yeah, Jets currently sitting at 6. New England goes to 4 because they win today. So good job there by Buffalo. Buffalo obviously didn't want New England to have that top pick, and they were more than happy to let the Patriots win that game. Scott says, hope it's not a bust. Hey, we never know. You know, Vernon Golston, Zach Wilson, we've all seen top, top 5 picks bust for this team. So there's nothing stopping, top 10, top whatever, anywhere they pick. Vlad says Reddick's been a disaster. Yeah, Reddick. I mean, look, I would love to maybe it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, he's taken $9 million in cap space, because that's money they'll have spent on Reddick that won't carry over. Reddick got $9.5 million by hitting his playing time incentives, but you'd at least have that $9 million. I think Joe Douglas would have waited him out, even though he traded for him. By the time once it's clear Reddick's not coming in, it's a bad deal by Douglas. It's sort of wait and see how these things play out, because even when Reddick missed the first 4 or 5 games, and we'll never get the true story. If the true story is that Reddick said I'm going to come in no matter what, and he didn't, that to me is less on them. But either way, it doesn't matter. Then who cares? It ended up being a bad trade. They lost the pick, and that was one thing that Greg Olson raised on the broadcast, talking about the Jets head coaching search and saying what is a team looking for, or what is a potential head coach looking for? What do you want when you're coming to a new team? And he said, well, do you have a quarterback? The Jets probably don't. I don't think they do. Do you have a lot of cap space? The Jets don't. And do you have a lot of draft picks? The Jets don't. They've got a couple of some picks from late deal, and they may get a comp pick or 2, but I don't think there'll be anything. It's not going to be an absurd. They're not going to get like a couple of third rounders. So we'll see what happens there. Realistically, who do you let walk this offseason versus resign? We'll probably do a show on that. Hell, we may have done one a few weeks ago. I can't even remember. But realistically, I think Rodgers goes. I think Devontae goes because Rodgers goes. I don't know if you trade Garrett, but I expect him to make some noise and demand it. Jamie and Sherwood's an interesting one because he's played really well, but it's going to depend on what type of scheme the new coach wants to run. So he may go. DJ Reed, obviously DJ Reed goes, who played well today. And when we talked about that the other day, myself and Dylan Terman, I did say that I did say you play him if you think he's going to be looking to prove himself after sort of admitting I'm out. I don't want to be here. Like with that comment came a lot of people saying, well, nobody wants you either, and you suck, and you've been mailing it in, and you're overrated. He obviously wanted to prove people wrong today. I thought he played a good game. Rob says, what's the infatuation with J.J. McCarthy? Well, he would be QB1 in this class, and he's got a year of quality coaching under his belt. So in a class where there are only 2 quarterbacks available and you're not in position to get either one, why not go trade for a guy who's probably graded higher than the 2 who are available? That's the infatuation. I mean, he was a first rounder last year, and he would most certainly be a first rounder, possibly be QB1 in this year's class. So, and again, you don't have a quarterback, or at least if Rich Cimini is right, and there's a lot of animosity between ownership and Aaron Rodgers, you may have one right now on paper, but in all reality, you don't. So there's your infatuation, is QB1. And like I said, I love the fact that he has spent a year with a quality coaching staff before coming here and working with the Jets, where quarterbacks come to regress. If not JJ, probably Tyrod. Well, maybe. And Tyrod's solid player, but look at his injury history. How many games are you getting out of Tyrod? 5, 6? Is that enough? And a lot of it's going to come down to when Woody sits down with this new coach GM tandem. Um, how much time do they have? I mean, I get that Woody's fed up with the playoff drought like the rest of us, but if this new coach comes in and says we don't have what we need to win, so there's going to have to be a couple more years of pain, then maybe you do go with Tyrod because who cares if he gets hurt and you only win 7 games on the season. But if Woody's like, hey, we have an offensive line, we have some receivers, we convinced Garrett to settle down and stay. We drafted whoever, or we plan on drafting a receiver early on. I want 9 or 10 wins year one. Well, then I don't think it is Tyrod. I think you go get somebody else, and we'll dig deeper this offseason and look around the league at what backup quarterbacks might be available via trade, who maybe people aren't talking enough about. But yeah, JJ over Tyrod every day of the week. I mean, a guy who's got a couple years left in his career versus a guy whose career is only just starting. You're gonna get, if he's good, you're getting 15 years out of him versus 1 or 2 of Tyrod. So, plenty of questions to be answered, plenty more to talk about. We will do it this week. Myself, Dylan Terman, Chris Schubert. The plan is for all of us to be available. We'll see how that goes. I will be watching this game, this Minnesota-Detroit game. That should be a hell of a game. A lot of good players. Vrabel, Rex, or Pete Carroll. Well, like I said, Vrabel is going to New England. I don't see Rex coming back. And Pete Carroll has never, since leaving the Jets, has never coached like east of California. Pete Carroll's a West Coast guy. And he's in his 70s. I don't know if he's wants to draft and develop a quarterback. He would probably want to. There was the rumor he would come east. There was a rumor the other day that he would like to go to the Bears, but probably because he would be inheriting a guy in Caleb Williams, who many feel is the most talented quarterback to come out of college in a million years, and he's at least got a year of experience under his belt. So that's different than the possibility of drafting a guy who's not as talented as Caleb and starting from square one. So I think all those guys are long shots. Rex only because Woody does worry a lot about the way things are perceived by the fans, and it's another year where it's another issue where fans are very divided. I think the Rex thing is almost like 50-50. And it's like the fans that love him, and the fans that hate him, hate him. Me personally, I've said it many times before. I loved Rex. I loved the Rex years. Good, Rich, 1-0. I had that thought the other day driving. I forget where the hell I was going. I say it all the time. I spend way too much time thinking about this team. And I was like, oh, if they beat Miami, they're 1-0 in 2025, as Robert Saleh would so foolishly say. But yeah, the Rex thing, I loved him, but I feel like he hasn't learned. That, I even was somewhat open to the possibility of a Rex return when the rumors first started swirling. Didn't think it would happen, but I was like, I wouldn't mind that. And then I see him doing that interview where he's still doing the same lines. Oh, if I'm there, we're gonna do this, and nobody's gonna want to play us. And come on, man, you've not been humbled, you've not realized. That tells me you probably haven't learned from your mistakes. So, and like I said, if they hired him, it would be weird. I don't know how I would react, honestly, because I loved Rex that much. But I'm also that aware of the fact that he probably hasn't changed a lot. But in fairness to Rex, in nothing but fairness to Rex, when he had good players, the team was good. We can't say that about Robert Saleh. Right? To me, the mark of a good coach, and I've talked about this, we always talk about, you're no good if you've never won a ring. I just always feel like you're a good coach if you get the most out of your talent. And I don't ever feel like there was a year with Rex Ryan where you were like, oh my God, that team was so much better. They should have won way more than that. You always got the most out of them, Year 2 of Sanchez, they could have been better. They lost games where the offense is scoring 9 points, 12 points. But they had a bad quarterback. They had a really bad quarterback. And they still found ways to win and go to the playoffs and win playoff games. So to me, that's the mark of a good coach. did you get the most out of your talent? I feel like Rex did that. When the talent started to dwindle once John Idzik came on board and the talent went down the toilet, the results went down the toilet. That's what happens. That's what happens. Rex will get you some wins if you get him some good players, and he'll suck if the players suck. He's not a miracle worker. He's not, even you can say Belichick, but Belichick always had Brady, when Belichick was good. Always had Brady to bail him out for the shortcomings. Let's see. Yeah, Scott says he's probably the last good coach we had. Yeah. I mean, can't argue it. Eric Mangini, did he get the most out of his talent? No. No, I don't think he did. He had some really good players. Never won a playoff game. So, Herm Edwards. No, definitely not with Herm. Herm made the playoffs and they had a winning record for several years that he was there. But if they had 1 year, the year that Curtis Martin led the NFL in rushing, and it was close too. Martin only led by a cut. And anyone can fact check me on this, but I'm like 99% sure this was the case. The Jets led the NFL in rushing, or they had the NFL's rushing leader in Curtis Martin, and they gave up like the fewest sacks per drop back, or the most dropbacks per sack. I think they were number one in the NFL in pass protection, and they barely. I think they snuck into the playoffs like 9 wins. Like that formula, any other team, if you protect the quarterback better than anyone in the NFL, and you are running the ball better than anyone in the NFL, you should be dominating. 12, 13, 14 wins. And I think they went like 9-7 or something like that, and just snuck into the playoffs and lost. So I don't think Herm did okay, but I don't think you could look at his teams and say he got the most out of his guys. He wasn't terrible, but I would put Rex above him. So that's pretty much it, folks. Season's over. 5-12, picking 7th or 8th. Need a head coach. Need a general manager. Your number one target's probably going to division rival, and number 2 target. Well, if it is, I'm assuming Aaron Glenn. But what the hell do he's my number 2 target, Aaron Glenn. Todd Monken 1, Aaron Glenn 2. Vrabel, I would probably have 3. But that doesn't matter because he's going. So that'll wrap this one up. That'll wrap up another miserable season of Jets football. It's kind of what we do. It's definitely what we know. And probably a fair bit more of it coming in the not too distant future. Make the best of it. Have a good one, Jets fans.